maybe give the people some background, who you are and what you're doing with especially with the funeral, because I think we can also have an interesting discussion with like time preference and seeing the death.
Yeah. So my name's Will. I am a licensed funeral director in California. My family owned a large funeral home and crematory in Southern California for almost 50 years. And we sold that funeral home at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. And at that time, I had a lot of time on my hands and a little bit of money from the sale of the business. And I had been scammed on Celsius and lost Bitcoin on Celsius while working at the funeral home the year before. And I had a bit of money in my pocket, and I said to myself, okay, I need to figure out how to invest this money. I've just spent 10 years of my life working extremely hard to help build my family's business and help families through grief and loss. And I asked myself the question, how can I store that time and energy most effectively so that I feel in the future that I've gotten the most out of the time and energy that I've already spent? So I want that time and energy to represent more for myself in the future rather than less, because I can never get that time back. But I want to find the mechanism to preserve and grow it the most for the future. Because I don't, if that money had been robbed of me through loss of purchasing power, I would feel that that time that I'd already spent was being taken from me as if I had not done it. And that led me to a research expedition of crypto more broadly, and then specifically Bitcoin, as I kind of eliminated crypto from the assets that actually would do what my goal was. So I went on a big tear for Bitcoin content, crypto content, and all those sorts of things, and finally really focused the vast majority of my time on reading about Bitcoin, listening to podcasts like yours on Bitcoin, and understanding what its purpose is now and in the future. So I ended up putting a lot of that money from the sale of the business into Bitcoin, and found it as the best savings tool for me, for my time and energy that I could. And that's kind of been my journey since the sale. And I did consulting for funeral homes, new cremation businesses wanting to launch, go to market strategies. And now I work for one of my clients who I'll probably end up getting a full-time job with in the next month or two, is after.com. They're an online-based cremation service, and I help open their business in new states within the US. So my job is to now travel to different markets in the US and look up the laws that are required to open a funeral establishment and find a piece of real estate that fits the laws, get the licensing so that we can open a funeral home there. So that's what I do now. And it's a fun job for me. It's not a fun job for, I imagine, 99 out of 100 people. But for me, I'm very good at it, and it's right in my skill set. And I enjoy it. And it's funny, Robert, because you hear Bitcoiners have like kind of a bit life crisis. Like they've kind of accumulated, a stack, and then price kind of runs away from them a bit. And then you have this crisis where you say to yourself, I'm probably not going to earn exponentially more money at my job. like I'll earn steadily more, but not exponentially more. So you're looking at your stack and you realize that it's probably not going to change materially over the next, 5 years or so, just because price appreciation has kind of hit some sort of escape velocity. Accumulating Bitcoin at 30 to 50,000 is a lot better than 105 to 110,000, right? Your dollars go half as far in accumulation at that stage. So I feel like my job now is kind of like almost like semi-retirement. Like I'm very comfortable with my stack. I'll always accumulate more in small portions, but now this job has kind of been reframed to me as fun. Like I don't have to worry about, raise negotiations or, vying for equity in the company. I can just do my job, be happy with it because I've saved in an asset that I know will preserve my time and energy well into the future. So I don't have to worry on a day-to-day basis, how am I going to figure out how to manage my money, earn twice as much money, or, any type of speculative investment to save me from, what's coming in the future. It's like I've done that work already. And now I can kind of take uh, pride in my work and handle it with, more clarity and way more calmness because I've made the decision earlier to save my time and energy in something that I know is going to work for me. So I work at this job for myself in spirit, and I give it all I have with no worry because Bitcoin is working for me.
That's beautiful. And it's a real, I mean, you're in a luxury situation if you're in this situation, but I've met some Bitcoiners that have been in Bitcoin for a longer period of time, and they've told me like, oh, I have X amount of Bitcoin. I have that earning capacity. I really have to invest aggressively in like making a company work or anything like that to out earn. So it actually makes a difference on my stack. At the same time, Bitcoin is growing exponentially faster. So Bitcoin as the hurdle rate is really hard to go after. And your earning capacity is kind of lagging behind if you're not growing really fast. Or maybe you are in a special situation where if Bitcoin grows, your business also grows, which, for example, with my podcast, with my mini small podcast business, I see if the price is really rising, like interest is getting strong and like the podcast is getting strong and like sponsors have more money and all those things. So like that's interesting. But outside of a special, outside of like being in the Bitcoin industry, you're probably not out earning Bitcoin.
Almost impossible.
Almost impossible. I mean, you can, but it's like very hard, and you have to be very successful either in your career or in a business. And this midlife crisis, you call it. I never heard that. I love the term midlife crisis. That's really, really interesting. And I want to get to like retiring on Bitcoin and how do you see that? But maybe before that, how has being someone in a funeral home, working there, owning that, doing that, operating that, impacted your time preference completely outside of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think working in a funeral home is one of the best industries to kind of understand the conceptual big picture Bitcoin ethos of low time preference. A lot of Bitcoiners, in my experience, are very humble people who want to add more value to the world than they take from it. And as a fundamental concept for life, that is a good strategy. Give more than you take, earn more than you spend, as a life philosophy. In my work at a at the funeral home, I talk to mostly people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, because those are the people who are near the end of their life. And those people have a tremendous amount of wisdom if you engage in those conversations about life with them. And what I've learned in dealing with grief and loss and families processing grief and loss is that at the end, the things that matter most is not money or your career. It's how did you treat your family? How did you nurture the most important relationships in your life? How did you find healthy balance between work and play, and make sure that you actually do save time for play with those that you care about, your family, your children, your grandchildren? Because at the end of your life, when you're looking back on all the time spent, because everyone only gets a finite number of hours on this earth. The only thing that's other than Bitcoin that's finite on this planet is your life. We all are going to die at some day, right? So our time is finite. There's a special realization that after I've heard hundreds of these points of wisdom, that life is meant to be lived. It is not a constant search for financial gain and accumulation of wealth, singularly. And I think a lot of people now, because they're forced to in a debt-based monetary system based on fiat, they are forced to concentrate on the accumulation of wealth, because if they don't, then they will get inflated out of existence. So I understand why it's happening. And I also know that that's not how human beings should have to operate. And in a, on a Bitcoin standard in the future, I hope that people can explore more creative, artistic, or passionate endeavors for their career and life, rather than, being stuck at a job that they don't like just to make ends meet and make bill payments, right? And I think now we're seeing more and more than ever that is what families are forced into. You have more dual working households. Both parents have to work because everything's so expensive. It's no longer an option in the state of the world. And when I see how these people in their 70s and 80s and 90s got to live, they could afford a home and food on the table, new clothes for school every year for the children, and 1 or 2 vacations a year on one income. Now it's 2 incomes and you can barely afford them, or you might have to give up 1 vacation, and you have to kind of sacrifice that for other necessary needs. So the baby boomers, the silent generation, have enjoyed an existence that we don't get to enjoy anymore. But understanding that those relationships still matter and we should still be concentrating on those, how do you solve for that problem so that your family doesn't have those issues? And to me, there's no better asset to store your time and energy for your benefit and your family's benefit in 10 and 20 years than Bitcoin. So I want to, when I'm 55, in a little over 20 years, I want my life to be cheaper in fiat terms. And Bitcoin's the only way that I see doing that, and the best way I see doing that. And that will give me and my family the flexibility and optionality and freedom to do more of what we want, what we like, than what we think that we have to do, right? I in my profession, I see a lot of noble people working a job for 40 years that they didn't like just to accumulate the wealth so that they could retire. And I think Bitcoin flips that entire thing on its head, especially if you see it early, which if you've, started a podcast business in this space, you see it and I see it too. And I think it's now about, spreading this message to more people so that more people get it.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.